In the neon-lit streets of Seoul, beneath the city's glittering skyscrapers and thriving nightlife, a war was brewing, a war that wasn't fought with politics or protest, but with bullets, fire, and a level of brutality that seemed almost theatrical in its cruelty. This was a war where allegiances shifted like sand, where revenge wasn't just a word but a performance, and where torture became an art. It is a story of ambition, betrayal, and blood, a Korean gang war that played out like an opera of chaos, leaving behind a trail of fire, corpses, and fear. The rise of the streets. The conflict began in the late 2010 seconds, when Seoul's organized crime scene started to fragment. Older crime syndicates that had operated quietly for decades were challenged by younger, more ruthless gangs, hungry for territory, influence, and money. Among them, two rival factions emerged: the Chungpa clique, a group descended from older organized crime families, and the Haniel Circle, a band of younger, tech-savvy criminals who controlled illicit online gambling and cryptocurrency laundering. The Chungpa clique represented tradition, discipline, loyalty, and an unspoken code of honor. Its members were experienced in smuggling, extortion, and controlling local businesses through fear. Meanwhile, the Haniel Circle represented the new era, agile, ruthless, and willing to innovate in crime. They didn't just fight on the streets, they used social media, encrypted messaging, and even online propaganda to assert dominance. The tension between old and new, experience and innovation, simmered for years. It wasn't just about territory, it was about survival. Every alleyway, nightclub, and underground poker house became a potential battlefield, and the city became the opera stage for a war that no one dared acknowledge publicly. The first sparks of violence. The first open confrontation occurred in 2017, during a clandestine meeting in a Seoul nightclub that both groups claimed as neutral territory. Negotiations over disputed territory turned violent when a senior member of the Haniel Circle allegedly insulted the Chungpa boss, Park Jun-soo. Within minutes, bottles shattered, guns were drawn, and what was supposed to be a negotiation turned into a massacre. Dozens of gang members and bystanders were injured. The Chungpa clique retreated, but the seed of revenge had been planted. That night, both sides realized that this was no longer a dispute, they were at war. Unlike typical gang confrontations, this conflict escalated rapidly because both factions were highly organized. Leaders on both sides kept meticulous records of attacks, allies, and betrayals. Every failed assassination or ambush was remembered, every slight noted. This war would not be fought merely for survival, it would be fought for revenge. And revenge in this war was orchestrated like a performance. The opera of torture. What set this gang war apart from other organized crime conflicts was the level of calculated brutality. Torture was no longer incidental, it was methodical, theatrical, and designed to send messages. Victims weren't simply killed, they were displayed, humiliated, and subjected to psychological and physical torment before their deaths. One particularly gruesome method involved placing captured rivals in abandoned warehouses rigged with fire and smoke. The victim would be forced to confess past betrayals while surrounded by flammable materials. Flames were then ignited not to immediately kill, but to watch terror take hold, prolonging suffering. Survivors of these encounters would spread the stories, ensuring that fear preceded each new attack. Another method involved forced public confessions and beatings. A captured gang member would be paraded in front of rival territory before being executed. These acts were filmed and distributed discreetly among members and allies, reinforcing loyalty and signaling the consequences of betrayal. It was a war in which cruelty became a message, and each act of violence was orchestrated like a dark, bloody opera. The fire that consumed the streets. By 2018, Seoul's gang war was no longer limited to private buildings or underground clubs. Arson became a preferred tactic, a way to assert dominance and terrorize both rival members and civilians. Nightclubs, bars, and warehouses became targets, often set ablaze with gasoline or Molotov cocktails. One notorious incident occurred in a small district in Gangnam, where the Haniel Circle set fire to a Cheonpo-run gambling house. Security cameras captured masked members throwing incendiary devices as patrons screamed and scrambled for exits. Several people perished in the flames, including members who had tried to switch allegiances. The fires weren't just about killing, they were statements. Each burning building marked territory, warned rivals, and sent a clear message. We are here. We are unstoppable. The city's fire department reported a significant spike in unexplained fires, though authorities were often unwilling to attribute them to gang activity publicly, fearing social panic. The psychological war. Beyond physical violence, psychological warfare became a key component of the conflict. Leaders used intimidation, propaganda, and fear to destabilize the opposing gang. Flyers depicting gruesome punishments were left on rival turf, sometimes featuring edited photos of previous victims. Anonymous social media posts detailed lessons taught to traitors, and encrypted messages warned that betrayal would not go unpunished. Even among their own ranks, leaders maintained control through terror. Members were forced to witness punishment rituals, ensuring they internalized the consequences of disobedience. Loyalty was never assumed, it was enforced through the threat of unimaginable violence. This psychological manipulation extended beyond gang members. Civilians in affected neighborhoods learned to avoid conflict areas, reinforcing the gang's control over the urban landscape. Fear became as powerful a weapon as bullets or fire. Escalation and civilian casualties. By 2019, the gang war had escalated to a scale that threatened public safety. Civilians became collateral damage in attacks originally meant for rival members. Drive-by shootings occurred on busy streets, bomb threats disrupted night markets, and bystanders were occasionally injured or killed. One infamous incident involved the Hanyo Circle ambush near a bus station. Their intended target, a Champa lieutenant, managed to escape, but 2 pedestrians and a bus driver were killed. The attack drew national attention, but police were hampered by the gang's careful planning, insider information, and widespread corruption. The public, though aware of escalating violence, often felt powerless. Many city officials were allegedly bribed or intimidated, while law enforcement struggled to gather evidence. The gangs had become so entrenched that confronting them directly carried severe personal risk. Revenge becomes ritual. Revenge was central to the conflict and became ritualized. Every killing was symbolic, targeting not just bodies but honor. A betrayal in 2020 led the Champa clique to capture 3 Hanyo Circle members, publicly forced them to kneel in the rain for hours, and then execute them in front of cameras. The footage was sent to the surviving gang members, reinforcing fear and demonstrating that revenge was inevitable, calculated, and continuous. This cycle of retaliation made the conflict self-perpetuating. Every act of violence demanded a counteract, and every slight became an excuse for extreme cruelty. One former member described the war as a never-ending opera of pain. Everyone has a role, and death is just the next act. International connections and money laundering. As the conflict continued, both gangs expanded into cybercrime and international smuggling. Cryptocurrency, laundering, online gambling, and even drug trafficking financed the war. Some younger members used social media platforms to recruit, coordinate, and intimidate rivals. These global connections made the war more complex. Weapons were smuggled from abroad, and some attacks were planned using encrypted messaging apps, monitored by nobody outside the gangs. Intelligence agencies in other countries noted the increase in cross-border activity, but South Korean authorities were reluctant to publicize the scale for fear of causing public panic. This financial and technological sophistication allowed the gangs to continue their violent operations while maintaining a veneer of invisibility to the outside world. The turning point. The year 2021 marked a turning point. After 4 years of escalating violence, public outcry forced authorities to act decisively. Police launched coordinated raids on gang-controlled neighborhoods, arresting hundreds of members and seizing weapons, explosives, and drug shipments. Many gang leaders, however, had already established escape networks. Several high-ranking members disappeared, allegedly fleeing abroad or going underground. The arrests, while significant, did not entirely end the violence, and sporadic retaliatory attacks continued for months. Still, the raids exposed the full scale of the war to the public. Videos, witness accounts, and recovered evidence revealed the horrific methods used: torture chambers, arson, ritualized killings, and systematic intimidation. The truth, once hidden, shocked a nation that had assumed organized crime operated quietly behind closed doors. The aftermath. By 2022, the gangs had been severely weakened, but the scars remained. Families of victims still mourned. Some neighborhoods were abandoned due to trauma, and the city's nightlife industry struggled with a lingering sense of fear. Former gang members faced reintegration challenges, carrying psychological trauma from the violence they both witnessed and enacted. Authorities implemented stricter measures against gang activity, surveillance, and illicit financial transactions. Programs were introduced to help former gang members leave the criminal life, though many remain wary of retaliation. The conflict had left a generation traumatized, illustrating that even after arrests, the shadow of violence can linger for decades. The Korean Gang War was never just a battle over territory, it was a story of human cruelty, ambition, and the dark artistry of vengeance. In the end, it left behind more than just death and destruction, it left a warning. The streets of Seoul are calm today, but the echoes of that war still linger, a haunting reminder of the price of ambition and the destructive beauty of revenge.